Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Realm of Unknown podcast, a paranormal podcast. If you guys are new here, and if you're tagging along from previous episodes, you know our deal and all the shticks that we have, and my long ramblings because I'm very poor with transitioning in and out of these episodes. So, I hope everyone's been doing well. Right now, I am recording this during the height of this massive heat wave that's going through, and it is hot as hell. I'm recording this at night so that I can actually turn off the AC so that there's not a lot of loud noise in the background. Thankfully, it has cooled off a bit, and thankfully, the apartment that I am in does not face the sun at all, ever, throughout the day. So there is no extra heat that comes in, which is I'm fairly thankful about that. Especially due to the fact that I have a window unit and my building actually shut down the central air to the units that have it because they're doing construction on it. They said that there's a crane, but I have not seen any such crane of any sorts on or near my building, so I don't know what they're referring to. But yeah, so that's been going on. Things have been good overall, though, so I don't really have a whole lot to actually talk about when it comes to updates and stuff with this thing. I mean, things have been good so far. Work's been great. Life's been okay. You know, it's life. It's whatever. But yeah, hope all things are good with you guys, and hopefully you're staying cool as you can right now. Obviously, all over the world. Apparently, the heat waves all over the place. So today's episode is a bit of a strange one. I feel like I always say that though. I want to talk about something that at the time I feel like I did discuss this at some point. I feel like I had to, or at least brought it up. This was a phenomena that occurred 2 years ago, around this time, give or take by a few months. That occurred 2 years ago in 2020, during the height of the pandemic. The COVID lockdowns were in full swing for the last several months. I think we were just getting into like that first weaning period where, people were like, we can go outside now. There's more stuff that's open. I think certain mask restrictions were like lifting somewhat, and I think like the very first waves of vaccines were being discussed to be rolled out. So it was a glorious time of people hoping to get back outside. And this occurs. If anyone is not aware or somehow blocked this part of life out, which I totally get because 2020 was a bit of a shit show overall and a bit of insanity. But do you all remember the strange phenomena that occurred in the tail end of 2020 that was the very odd metallic monoliths that popped up all over the place? So that's what we're going to talk about today. I was going to hold off on it for a good while. I feel like I was planning an episode of this sort, like I want to say like maybe a month or two after the first spotting, and then I pushed it back, and then I was glad I pushed it back because more stuff was happening, and then I was like, I'll do it in the summer of 2021, and the summer of 2021 was a bit of an odd one. There was a lot of change and stuff happening in my life personally, so it just kind of fell to the wayside, and then here we are. This is partially because I'm kind of going through an old list of episode topics, and I was like, this is a cool one. I wonder what's happening. And I looked into it, and apparently it's a lot deeper than I actually realized. Not so much of the conspiracy side of the things, because that is part of this, but just the general scope. I was not personally aware of just how widespread this phenomena was. And we'll talk about that because it's very interesting. So the way I want to break this down, I want to talk about, what generally happened and like where this was occurring. And then I want to talk about like the opening timeline, not the overarching timeline, because that's a whole different story. But just to kind of get a look and feel of like those first few beginning weeks that were like, the really crazy media hypes of articles. The news was covering this. People were blowing this up on social media. TikTok was all going insane with it. Instagram, Twitter, like everyone was going insane, and it makes sense. I mean, at that time of year, of that time of history, like honestly, like everyone had been cooped up in their houses. We had been dealing with the pandemic for, I don't know, maybe 6 months at this point, maybe even less in some parts of the world. Like, it was a really crazy time. COVID death numbers were like way, way, way up. The summer of 2020 was an absolute shit show. And I think this was a good way to like escape almost for a lot of people, to kind of make them forget almost. And I think that might be a reason why it blew up so much. I don't know if this would have been as big of a deal any other time. I'm sure it would have been. It's the internet, so obviously. But let's just get into this. Let's get into the general gist of what was going on. So again, this took place in 2020, and the very start of our timeline is going to take us to mid-November. So mid-November of 2020, November 18th was the exact day, is when the very first monolith was discovered. It was spotted by state biologists who were conducting research and surveys of the bighorn sheep species in Utah. Specifically, they were in Moab, Utah. And they're out in the desert. They're out in an extremely remote area. Well, not extremely remote because it's still a state area, but relatively remote into the general gist of things. Not a place that was developed in any way. Not a place where there's like a bunch of roads and like maybe a house or two here and there. Like, it's the desert. There's nothing out there. These biologists, who I believe they were up in a helicopter at the time, spotted what they described as a 9-foot tall metallic panel that once they came down and they got a bit closer, they realized that it was in fact this monolith, this obelisk, this pillar, this column, whatever you want to call it. It has a bunch of different names to describe it. Most people call it a monolith. It was installed into the ground, and it just baffled them. Like, what is this doing out here? It's in the middle of the desert. It's like kind of like tucked away between like some cliff edges. Like, it's not out in the open. Like, it's kind of hidden behind things that like at certain angles you couldn't see it. So it's just bizarre overall, and it made no sense to these scientists who are like, what is happening right now? And they even said, like, this is a very isolated place that you'd have to probably get there via vehicles. This would not be a place that carrying these 9-foot metal panels, and we'll discuss why I say panels because that's what it's made of, out into the desert would not be an easy feat. Like, you would have to like plan to do this. And most people at the time, and even I think even the crew, they described it as being reminiscent of the monolith that shows up in the movie 2001: A Space Odyssey. I guess, sure, it's a skinny, tall structure in the desert. Okay. But I don't know, whatever. People on the team joke that it was maybe something that NASA put out there. Perhaps they're using it to like bounce satellite frequencies. People had theories that this was something to do with like being able to calibrate satellites with specific locations so that they could use it, like Google Maps type stuff. So it started to spur a lot of speculation. The team took photographs of it, they took some videos, and they posted it onto their Facebook, playfully joking about it, being like, look what we just discovered. They kept the location private from what I can understand, but it's the internet, so it got out and it blew up. Reddit user actually, Tim Schlane, was able to very quickly deduce where this was located, and other users were also able to figure out where this was, out in the Utah desert. But specifically, Tim was able to pinpoint the fact that this was installed, I should say, between the time frame of, I think it was August of 2015 and October of 2016, based off of Google Map images and like archive photos. It's a rather broad gap of time, I understand, but it gives us a good estimate of like between that month of this year and then August of 2016, it was installed because there was a new photo, it was refreshed in the system. And then since that point, it was always there. Like the next several years, for those 4 years in between, it stayed there. Like it wasn't moved, it wasn't changed, it wasn't replaced. It was just there, which gives us a good idea of like, hey, this wasn't here for a while, and then it just popped up out of nowhere. And again, Tim discovered that, the Reddit user, he shared that online. It got picked up by news articles. I don't think he specifically gave the location, but again, the location got out. It became a fairly well-trafficked spot. People were going there to take photographs. They were doing photo shoots. All those crazy influencer type wannabe people went out there, because I don't recall like big actual influencers going out there. I think it was really just like small local wannabe people, going out there taking photographs, doing photo ops, filming TikTok videos, going insane, whatever. And it caused a lot of controversy for a lot of people as well, because again, this was a very lightly trafficked area. People were out there for the wilderness. They were either on trails or they were camping. They were researchers, etc. This wasn't a place that people just kept driving up and back, but now it was. A lot of cars were going out there, four-wheelers, people being shitty people and, leaving trash and like beer cans and shit all over the place, stomping the ground. It was a very controversial time within the phase of this overall timeline. And keep in mind, started from November 18th. We're now probably like a few days out. And then like a week or two go by, and November 27th rolls around, and the monolith is gone. Just gone. Just this 10-foot tall structure, which description-wise was 4 metal sheet panels formed in a sideways like triangle pyramid type formation, installed into the ground. Like there was a indent downwards, and it was placed in there like firmly. Just gone. It's completely gone overnight. People were not there. They came back the next day. There were more, obviously people who wanted photographs, and it was just completely gone. No trace. Just a little indent in the ground, and it was vanished. And obviously, people were joking, like, oh my god, the extraterrestrials took it back, the government's trying to cover things up, what the heck's going on? People on the internet went crazy. A lot of people believe that it was the result of some environmental activists, and there were 2 people who did come forward claiming that it was. I believe, let me see if I can find their names. Their names were, one was a tour guide, I believe, by the name of Slyven Christensen, and the other was a base jumper by the name of Andy Lewis. They were the ones who came forward and claimed that they were the ones who took it down. They posted a video about the monolith being removed that night, and they wrote that they were not proud of doing the act. However, again, they believe this was environmentally driven. They were not happy about the foot traffic and the amount of attention that it was bringing to the area. Again, by these like wannabe influencer types who kind of just don't care. They're just stomping around. Look, I get it. It's a good cause, but it's it's interesting. At the same time, like I wanted to learn more, and it's bizarre because it's there for a few days, then it disappears, and people are, this whole time still don't even know what the heck was going on. We discovered that it was installed, between the years of 2015 and 2016, but why was it there? People, again, thought that there was maybe a 2001 Space Odyssey connection. Some people thought that it was actually an installation for the filming of Westworld, like it was maybe some like weird ARG thing that they were trying to make, but then just never did it. but then forgot to uninstall it. But I don't think that was proven. Other people believe that it was actually an art piece, there was a very understandably reasonable explanation, being an art installation. Specifically, though, people pointed out that it was probably from a man named John McCracken, who was a famous artist and sculptor. Emphasis on was because John died in 2011, which, keep in mind, or I should say, if you remember, we definitively determined that this was installed after, at the very least, after August of 2015, but he died in 2011. So either this was an art piece that he installed prior to that, or had in the motions, I should say, prior to that, and someone did it on his behalf, or it's not him. More than likely, it's not him. There's no explanation. Like, there really is no, from what I can understand, there's no explanation as to why it was there in the first place. Like, no definitive person came forward. And keep in mind, I'm recording this 2 years later. I feel like if someone had stepped forward, the articles that I'm looking through, which are all articles that were written at the very least a year after the initial event, would have come forward. And they would have stated it. But none of them do. Like, none of them do. The Wikipedia does it. Like, none of the articles or the research that I've looked into know for sure why or how this original monolith showed up. And I emphasize original because we will discuss the ones to follow. Which is a good transition for here because, again, it was discovered in November of 2018, it was discovered November 18th of 2020. It was installed at the very least after August of 2015 and sat undiscovered for either 4 or 4.5 years until we found it in 2020. It stayed that way from November 18th until it completely vanished. It was uninstalled by some people who came forward, but it vanished on November 27th of that same year. Literally only 9 days. Like, it was not up for a very long time. You would probably think, like, okay, that's the end of the story, it was taken down, whatever. The weird shit keeps happening because the exact same day, November 27th of 2020, a second monolith is discovered. And this time, it was discovered in an ancient forest, the Decane Forest, on the opposite side of the globe, in Romania, just in the woods. Specifically, it's near a town, but it's near like a small town, and it's out in the wilderness again, and just shows up. Just overnight shows up. It was not there the day before. People immediately drew connections to the original one, again, that was disappeared that day, and another one showed up that exact same day across the globe. People were freaking out. They're like, is this weird? Like, again, like, people were thinking like it was an ARG, it was a promotion for something. No one knew what was actually going on, because this was happening fairly quickly, like same day type stuff, and people are already crazy about the first one. This one bore a striking similarity to the original one, both being roughly 10 feet tall, metallic in structure, being a kind of, I don't know the term for what a triangle cylinder is, but like a prism type structure that just goes straight up type column. However, and I should also note these were all hollow because it's 3 panels placed together, not just like a solid piece of metal. However, this one in particular was different. It had these kind of, the first one was very sleek. It was very like mirror-like almost, or like stainless steel. This one was a bit rougher. There were kind of like swivel patterns on it. There were clear welding marks because it was like literally welded together rather than like smoothly put together. And again, it was covered in these weird like circular markings that kind of looked as though a power tool was taken to it. It was very weird. And the locals started posting stuff. It got on the internet again. It blew up again. The mayor thought it was a cool thing. He kind of promoted the general area a bit via the phenomena, and it makes sense. And I don't think this one, again, no one really came forward and claimed what was going on with this one. And very shortly after, because again, this was discovered on November 27th of 2020, very shortly after, on my birthday, on December 1st, so 4 days later, without a trace, without any explanation, again, overnight, it disappears. Gone. Just completely gone. Once again, just completely gone. And people were like, what is happening? Like, is this an ARG? Is this a promotion for a movie or a show? Like, is this a weird environmental statement? Is this some sort of, artist collection that is doing this weird art piece for COVID? Like, is this government's shit? What is what is this? What is the point of this? And the answers don't come because one day later, the third monolith shows up. This time, it is located on the Pine Mountain location of I'm gonna butcher this, Atascadero, California. And again, this one resembles the other two. It was hollow. It was roughly 9 to 10 feet tall. It had, it was a metal prism. However, this one, unlike the other two that were installed into the ground itself, this one was just kind of erected. It wasn't installed. It was just kind of there. People, again, once more, went crazy. This was in California, so even more influencer wannabes showed up. Photo ops were taken. Instagram, pics were shot. TikToks were taken. It was this crazy phenomena. And then all the while, this one did not disappear. I will give it that. However, it was destroyed. It was very publicly and because it was live streamed, destroyed by a group of men. I think it was like 4 or 5, who drove 5 hours. This was like destroyed the next day. So December 2nd, it was put in overnight, like with no notice. And then December 3rd, these dudes likely decided it the day it was announced that they needed to go and drive 5 hours from Orange County, live streaming the experience of themselves toppling the prism. They were shouting a shit ton of xenophobic comments, and they placed a plywood cross in the spot where it was placed as a marker because, they're radicalized-ish type Christians, and of course they're Christians because Christians are insane. And I feel very safe commenting that because I grew up Catholic. That's the type of Christian, and we're bad shit, especially American Christians. So suck it. I don't care. Y'all suck. So that shit happened, and that actually it's gonna be a talking point for the bonus episode of the Patreon. Crazy Christians, America, y'all suck. So that's kind of the last main timeline monolith I want to talk about. Another one popped up that people like kind of credit to in December, like a few days later in Washington. However, I don't think, or I should say Washington D.C. However, I don't put too much credit into that one. It's whatever. But I just wanted to bring up the scope and the scale of what happened because I personally was following this phenomena online because at this point of time, at this time of my life, I was working at my old job. It was an okay job. I've talked a bit about it in the past. I don't want to foul mouth it too much. Let's just say that I endured going through it and put on a smile, but it was not a wonderful experience, all in all. But while I was there, we talked about a lot of strange things from time to time. I work environment was a bit more conservative leaning, or I should, whatever, which leads into a lot of conspiracy theories. QAnon stuff was going crazy at that time. Vaccine mandate stuff was going crazy at that time. Voter fraud theories. God, the amount of fucking videos I had to sit through where I just wanted to rip my hair out because I'm like, this isn't evidence. And then if you provide like any counter argument, they're like, you're being so defensive, like you don't trust anything, and I'm like, isn't your whole theory based off of you not trusting someone else? It's dumb. It's so dumb. I'm not the smartest person out there, but I'd like to think that I'm relatively rationally minded and skeptical in general. And I don't know, conspiracy theories hurt my brain, especially the stupid ones. But suffice to say that this led into a lot of discussions. When the first monolith showed up, we talked about it. In the morning before we actually started work, we'd be like, "Yo, did you hear about what's going on? Like, have you checked Twitter? Like, the monolith's gone now. There's a second one. What is happening?" And we followed it for a little bit. I followed it a bit longer, and I stuck around for a few weeks, being like, "Oh shit, there's a third one. There's like a fourth and a fifth one that showed up. What is going on? This one's stayed around for a bit." I recall hearing the testimony of like, how when the first one was torn down, how it happened, why it happened. And I was like, what is happening with all this? But then it petered out. Honestly, like it petered out because the talks around the office led more into voter fraud stuff, vaccine mandate stuff, and then obviously January 6th happened, which I recall my boss running in and being like, they stormed the Capitol, and I was like, I don't know what that means. I'm literally working right now. But then like a second later, I realized what it was because I was like, oh fuck, what is happening? Like I was interested and scared, but whatever. Suffice to say, tangent here. The discussion of this petered out and my interest petered out, and I think the general news coverage of this kind of decided that, hey, we cannot fucking keep only making Monolith articles because too much shit's happening. As of right now, or I should say as of when all these articles were written and all these statistics were pulled together, there were Monolith trackers, and as of them writing this, and I think the latest one I could find was like November of 2021 in mention of the Monoliths. There were in total, ones that were torn down, ones that disappeared, ones that were still erect. In total, across the globe, 238 different monoliths in different locations, different cities, different wildlife locations, different countries, different continents, all over the globe between the time frame of, again, November 2020 until about like mid-ish 2021. I want to say it was like, March to May 2021 was like around the, kind of most of them petering off. And to put it into scale for, my American listeners, and then I will do the international listeners because we do have a fairly good number of you. Thank you. I just want to discuss, and I just want to run through this list. This is from Wikipedia, and I'll leave the link down below for you guys to find the specific ones because I'm not going to talk about all of them. I'm just going to list them off. I want to talk about how widespread this was because I do not recall this many popping up. Within the United States, these are the states in which a monolith showed up. At the very least one. And most are in alphabetical order, so I'll just go run through. Arkansas, or Arkansas, whatever. California had a fuck ton. There was like 8 or 9. Colorado had 2. Florida had 2. Georgia had 1. Kentucky, Massachusetts, Michigan had 3. Missouri, Nebraska, Nevada, New Mexico, New York, North Carolina, Oregon. Pennsylvania had 2, I believe. Texas, I believe, had 4, from what I can understand. Utah, obviously, had the original one, but then a second one about a year later, or like 8 months later. Vermont, Washington, D.C., and Wisconsin. That is, let me count or scroll back up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 20 states and Washington, D.C. That is almost half of the United States had a monolith pop up. And again, within months of each other. Obviously, a lot of these are probably because of the trend. This very much became a trend and like a meme. Some people were using it for promotion, others were just doing it for photo ops, others were just showing up with no explanation and might have just been an individual doing it, but some of them have no explanation. So, oh wait, actually, Utah had 2 extra ones. Interesting. There was actually another one discovered on December 4th of that same year. Very interesting. Okay, but then I just want to give a broad overview of, again, how widespread this was, because this hit a bunch of different areas around the globe. We talked about Romania, and that was like the very first taste of the international branch, but they showed up all over the place, again, within these like few month time frames. There was one in Iran, there was one in Colombia, Paraguay, Bolivia. Central America had one in Panama. There was also one in the Bahamas. There was one in, I think there's 1 or 2 in South Australia, Veronica, New Zealand, over, in the Oceania areas. Obviously, that big list for the Americas, or I should say the United States. But the Americas had more because North America, y'all. Canada had a bunch in their different provinces. Alberta had a few. British Columbia, I think, had 3. Manitoba, I shouldn't. Whatever. I'll stop with that. Had 1. Ontario had 2 or 3, I think. I think it's 2, but whatever. Quebec had 1, and Saskatchewan had 1 as well. So Canada had a few. The United Kingdom had, like, I think 5 or 6. They had a bunch. Turkey, Switzerland, Sweden surprisingly had 5. Spain had 3. Slovenia had 2. Slovakia had 1. We talked about the one over in Romania that disappeared. Italy had like 3 or 4. The Netherlands had 4. Norway, Poland had 2. Hungary had 1 or 2. France had like 3 or 4. Finland had, I think, 4 in total, but 2 of them I think were kind of tied together in some way. The Czech Republic, Belgium had 3. Austria had, I think, 5, which, that's a lot. But surprisingly, Germany had the most. They had like 10 different monoliths show up, or monolith-like structures. Like, they had by far the most out of Europe. I mean, obviously the United States had more because I think it was more of a trendy type thing to do, and I think a lot of them were promotion heavy. But I'm surprised by that. Like, between Germany, Austria, and like Sweden and stuff like that area had a bunch of different monoliths pop up. And Germany's were all in December. Like, literally between December 5th and December 22nd, all 10 of their monoliths popped up, were either, removed, stayed around, or were destroyed within that amount of time. Like, it's just weird. And you would think that's the end, because, I mentioned that list that I'm running off of. It spans between the original one in November of 2020 and goes until roughly like March to May of 2021, and then things kind of die off until an article that I found from iHeartRadio, which was posted on February 1st of this year, of 2022. The monolith is back there is another mysterious monolith that just appeared just north of Phoenix, like a day or two before this was written. They don't really go into detail. I think it gets discussed from like a Twitter post. From what I can understand, it was just showed up off the side of the road on Sunset Point along I-17, and that's it. Like there's really not a whole lot of extra details to go off of from this article. They just kind of talk about it. I cannot find any later articles than this one from February of 2022. Most of like the timeline stuff that I've talked about, most of the articles that reference the original ones, they're all from, mid to late 2021. Some of them were from late 2020 when they were actually covering the events live. But there's not a whole lot from after that point, from, end of 2021 into 2022. Like, what was going on from that point onwards? And it seems like, the Wikipedia has been updated as of like a few days ago, honestly. But I can't determine whether or not that was actually anything sufficient. But it does not seem like there have been too many. Like even if I scroll down to their citations, they're all like, 2020, 2021, 2020. Most of them are in 2020 as these things were popping up. Like I don't see any article from 2022 at all. Like I'm scrolling. Yeah, I can't see any. So who knows? Honestly, who knows? Again, people theorize all over the place how the original one showed up. I personally think it was probably some sort of installation. Artists are weird, but even more so, like, the reasoning for someone to either do it themselves or to commission one is always going to be weird. I don't really know what this is. I thought it was an interesting thing. I am somewhat appreciative to actually be around when this happened and followed it a bit. I'm interested in all those like ARG type stuff or like internet mysteries and kind of figuring out what the heck's going on with them. But most of the big ones, most of the ones that turned out to be a thing or that people actually discovered, most of those were like way before my time on the internet. Or if it was, I was way too young. I was not allowed on those websites or had access to them, or I didn't even know that they existed. But yeah, this is really it for this topic. There's not a whole lot more to go into. Again, the latest that I could find is from earlier this year, but from most of what I can understand, it's just a weird trend after the first three, and it kind of helped people, forget what was going on during 2020 and the COVID lockdowns, and I think we'll always be remembered as like the year 2020 was so bizarre with so many weird things. That in and of itself was a meme of like how insane can this year be, and it literally ended with like, are these like alien monoliths in the desert? What is this? And I thought that was a fun, neat way to end it. No one got hurt from what I can understand. Local environments maybe got trampled a bit, but I don't think there was anything too significant that actually occurred. Hopefully, knock on wood. I don't obviously know every story out there. But yeah, I thought it'd be fun to talk about that, kind of break it down, talk about it a bit more. This was all free flow. I didn't write anything for it. I just kind of read through articles live, and I don't know. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you don't, please let me know. But I thought this was a fun one to kind of discuss and get your guys' feel for weird things, because get ready, August is going to be a interesting month. I talked about it in the last episode, but conspiracy theories are unfortunately in the forefront of my mind and my life at this point because I am researching a lot. It is so exhausting. But in the meantime, if you guys did enjoy this episode and you wish to help support the podcast in any way, you can do so by following us over on social media. We are Realm of Unknown all over the place, every platform, or check out the website, usethename.com. Same with the Gmail, usethename.com, Realm of Unknown. It's everywhere. And if you wish to help the podcast a bit more, you please feel free to leave a review either on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or Stitcher, wherever you listen to podcasts. If you could leave a 5-star review or a good review or a constructive review, because I do appreciate reviews that are honest, that actually provide some sort of feedback. I am an artist. I had to sit through a lot of reviews saying that your work is garbage, so I am used to it. But if you also wish to get some bonus stuff and support the show, you can do so over at patreon.com/Realm of Unknown, where you will get bonus episodes to get released weekly after every main episode, even after this one. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a article that I want to talk about, event that occurred recently that is very similar to the third monolith being destroyed by religious zealots. So get ready for that. There's a bunch of backlog episodes. If you've listened to the Weird of the Week compilation episodes that were uploaded, you get all those like goodies. There's a bunch more over there exclusive to Patreon. There's a bunch of Patreon exclusive series. You get behind the scenes, participation in monthly polls, and a lot of extra goodies, particularly the ones I like, or the photographs and audio recordings from investigations that I get to go on for paranormal hunts and just haunted locations in and around Philadelphia. It's a lot of good stuff. And if you want to check it out, again, it's Realm of Unknown / oh my God, it's the reverse. It's patreon.com / Realm of Unknown. And there's a $1, $3, and $5 tier list. And obviously, the higher you go, the more reward you get from the tiers below. And that's all I have. I'm done shilling. I leave it to the end, but I really probably should shill in the beginning. But, whatever. I hope you guys did enjoy this episode. I hope you guys are staying cool and hydrated as much as you can during this crazy heat wave. And please stay safe and everything. It's a really still crazy time in the world. And I think we're all just kind of still exhausted from a lot of shit that's been happening. But yeah, stay safe, stay hydrated, and on top of everything else, remember to stay spooky. Have a good one, guys.